In 2015, a researcher asked a room full of adults a simple question: describe your inner voice. Half the room answered instantly, the other half sat in confused silence. They didn't have one, not a faint one, not a quiet one, none at all. And when scientists dug deeper into the people who did have an inner voice, they found something stranger. It wasn't originally theirs. Most people assume the voice in their head is simply them, thinking, naturally, from birth. That's not quite right. And the real explanation is far stranger than you'd expect, because that voice had to be built, piece by piece, out of someone else's words. In the 1930s, a Soviet psychologist named Lev Vygotsky proposed something radical. He argued that children don't start life with an inner voice. They start with an outer one. Toddlers talk to themselves constantly, out loud, narrating their own actions. I'm putting the block here. Now the red one. Adults call this cute. Vygotsky called it the beginning of thought itself. He believed this outer speech doesn't disappear as children grow. It goes underground. Around age 7, most children stop narrating out loud. But they don't stop narrating. The words just move inside. What used to be spoken becomes silent. What used to be heard becomes thought. In other words, your inner voice began as your outer voice. Before it was private, it was a performance. For other people, using their language, their sentence structures, their rhythms. So the voice narrating your life right now didn't originate inside you. It originated in every adult who ever spoke to you before you could speak back. But that's only the first layer, and it might not even be the strangest one. In 2010, psychologist Charles Fernyhough at Durham University took Vygotsky's theory further. He wanted to know exactly what inner speech is made of, down to the sentence. His team used experience sampling, interrupting people at random points in the day, and asking them to report exactly what they'd just been thinking in exact wording. The results were unexpected. Inner speech wasn't a smooth monologue. It was fragmented, compressed, full of other people's voices layered on top of each other. A mother's warning, a teacher's correction, a friend's joke, replayed years later in a completely different context. Fernyhough's conclusion was blunt. Your inner voice isn't one voice. It's a chorus, edited down to sound like one. Here's where it gets genuinely uncomfortable. If your inner voice was built from other people's speech, then the tone it uses on you, harsh or kind, patient or cruel, was likely copied directly from somebody else. Researchers studying self-critical inner speech have found a consistent pattern. The internal voice that criticizes you often mirrors, almost word for word, the way a parent or authority figure once criticized you. Not the content, the cadence, the specific phrasing, the pauses in the same places. You didn't invent your own harshest critic, you inherited it, and you've been running it on a loop uncredited for years. Then there's the discovery that changes everything about how strange this actually is. Remember the room full of adults from the beginning, the ones with no inner voice at all. Psychologist Russell Hurlburt spent decades studying this condition, now called anendophasia. People who experience zero inner narration report something remarkable. They think in images, sensations, and what researchers call unsymbolized thinking, complete thoughts with no words attached at all. And critically, these people are not impaired. Many function identically to everyone else. Some are writers. Some are public speakers who craft sentences fluently out loud despite having no sentence forming silently in their head first. Which means the inner voice was never a requirement for thought. It was an option your particular childhood happened to install. So if it's optional, if some brains build one and others don't, the question becomes uncomfortable in a new way. What decided whether you got one? The current answer, still being researched, points back to Vygotsky. Children raised in environments with heavy verbal narration, parents who talk through actions, ask constant questions, encourage self-narration, are more likely to internalize that voice permanently. Children raised in quieter, less narrated environments are more likely to retain the capacity for wordless thought. In other words, the presence of your inner voice isn't a fact about your mind. It's a record of how much talking happened around you before you turned 7. Every sentence it says was shaped by a specific childhood, in a specific house, full of specific people, most of whom you no longer remember as individuals. And that voice is still running, right now, reading these words back to you in what feels like your own private thought. It isn't private, it never was. It's a compressed archive of every voice that spoke to you before you could speak for yourself, still narrating your life exactly the way it was taught to. You didn't build the voice in your head, you inherited it, and you've been mistaking it for yourself ever since.